I stand in the doorway of the Blackwood mansion, counting the crystal chandeliers, 3 in the foyer alone, and wondering how many years it would take me to afford just one of them on my teacher's salary. Mother Margaret, as she insists I call her, watches me from her perch on the curved staircase. Her silver-streaked hair pulled into an immaculate chignon that probably costs more than my monthly rent. "Cecilia, darling, do close the door. You're letting in the riffraff," she says, not bothering to hide her smirk as I fumble with my overnight bag. "I'm here because Michael insisted we spend the weekend celebrating his parents' 35th wedding anniversary. It'll be different this time," he promised. "They'll warm up to you eventually." "Right. And maybe pigs will start doing synchronized swimming in that Olympic-sized pool out back." "Thank you for having me," I manage, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. The marble floor echoes my footsteps, broadcasting my presence like an unwanted announcement. Rebecca appears at the top of the stairs, Michael's perfect sister in her perfect Chanel suit, wearing that perfect plastic smile. "Oh good, you made it. Mother was just saying how interesting it would be to have you join us this weekend." I bet she was. Interesting like a car crash or a public execution. "Where's Michael?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. "Conference call in Father's study," Margaret replies, descending the stairs with the grace of a queen addressing her subjects. "Business before pleasure, you understand. Or perhaps you don't, given your profession." There it is. The first dig of what promises to be a weekend full of them. I clutch my bag tighter, my knuckles white against the worn leather. "I'll show you to your room," Rebecca offers, though we both know it's not really an offer. "The East Wing, Mother?" "The Blue Guest Room," Margaret corrects, her voice sharp. "The East Wing is for family." I follow Rebecca up the stairs, past oil paintings of stern-faced Blackwoods who seem to judge me with their dead eyes. The Blue Guest Room, as it turns out, is at the furthest end of the West Wing, practically in another zip code from Michael's old bedroom. "Dinner's at 7, Rebecca announces, hovering in the doorway. Mother expects everyone dressed appropriately. Of course she does. I drop my bag on the bed, which probably costs more than my car. "Oh, and Cecilia?" Rebecca pauses, her perfectly manicured hand on the doorframe. "Try not to embarrass Michael this time. Last Christmas was unfortunate." Before I can respond, she's gone, leaving behind only the echo of her Louboutins on hardwood and the faint scent of Chanel No. 5. I sink onto the bed, pulling out my phone to text Michael, but pause when I hear voices drifting through the heating vent. Margaret's distinctive tone carries clearly. "It's time we discussed Michael's future at the company. I won't have that woman derailing everything we've built. Did you know she's been encouraging him to start his own business? In Seattle, of all places. What do you suggest?" Rebecca's voice, eager to please. "I've already spoken with the board. We're creating a position that will require extensive travel, keeping him busy, away from her influence. She'll either leave on her own or show her true colors trying to stop it." My hands shake as I lower the phone. The perfect mask of civility drops, and suddenly I see everything clearly. This isn't just about acceptance anymore. This is war, and Margaret has just made her first move. Fine. If she wants to play games, I'll play. But I'm not following her rules anymore. I open my suitcase and pull out the black cocktail dress I bought specifically for tonight. Time to show Mother Margaret exactly what kind of woman her son married. The anniversary dinner feels like a minefield where every word could trigger an explosion. I smooth down my black dress, carefully chosen to match Margaret's usual cocktail attire, and watch Michael fidget with his tie across the mahogany dining table. He hasn't met my eyes since he emerged from his father's study. "Cecilia, dear," Margaret's voice cuts through the clink of sterling silver, "do tell everyone about your little school. It must be so rewarding, shaping young minds on such a modest scale." I take a slow sip of wine, noting how she's seated Michael between herself and Rebecca. Actually, I've just been appointed department head. We're implementing a new curriculum that's being considered for adoption across the district. Rebecca's fork scrapes against her plate. How nice. Though I suppose leadership means something different in the public sector. Speaking of leadership, Margaret interjects, Michael, darling, tell everyone about the Singapore project. My hand tightens around the stem of my wine glass. Singapore. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Michael clears his throat. It's still in the early stages, Mother. Nonsense. The board's already approved your position as project director. 18 months minimum, isn't it? Such an opportunity. The room spins slightly. 18 months. Our plans for Seattle dissolve like sugar in rain. Congratulations, brother dear. Rebecca's smile is razor sharp. Though it must be difficult for you, Cecilia, with Michael away so much already. Actually, I set down my glass with deliberate care. Michael and I have been discussing other opportunities. Closer to home. Margaret's eyes flash. Have you now? Michael, you hadn't mentioned. It's nothing concrete, Michael interrupts, still avoiding my gaze. Just ideas. Ideas can be dangerous things, Margaret says softly. Especially when they come from outside influences. Aunt Helen, silent until now, speaks up from her end of the table. I rather think new ideas are exactly what this family needs. Don't you agree, George? Michael's father grunts noncommittally behind his newspaper, his standard response to family tension. Helen, please, Margaret's tone could freeze hell itself. This is hardly the time to. When is the time, Margaret? I surprise myself by asking. When Michael's safely tucked away in Singapore? When you've managed to schedule every minute of his life without consulting his wife? The silence that follows is deafening. Rebecca looks delighted at my outburst, while Michael seems to be trying to disappear into his chair. I think, Margaret says carefully, that you forget your place in this family, Cecilia. We've welcomed you. Welcomed? I laugh, and it sounds slightly unhinged even to my ears. Is that what you call this? The separate bedroom? The constant reminders of my inadequacy? The secret plans for my husband's future? Cecilia, Michael finally speaks, his voice strained. Can we discuss this later? Later. Always later. I stand, my chair scraping against the floor. Well, I have some news of my own. I've been offered a position too, heading up an educational consulting firm. In Seattle. Margaret's face goes absolutely still. Michael, you didn't tell me. Because he doesn't know, I cut in. I just found out today. Funny how we both seem to be making life-changing decisions without consulting each other. I turn to leave, but pause at the doorway. Oh, and Mother Margaret? Black really isn't your color. You might want to rethink your wardrobe choices. As I stride away, I hear Aunt Helen's rich laugh floating behind me, followed by the distinct sound of Margaret choking on her wine. It's a small victory, but right now, I'll take what I can get. Back in the blue guest room, I pull out my phone and start researching Singapore. If Margaret wants to play hardball, she's about to learn that this public school teacher knows how to swing back. The question is, whose side will Michael choose when the dust settles? A soft knock at my door interrupts my plotting. Cecilia? It's Aunt Helen's voice. I think it's time we had a proper chat about Margaret's other little schemes. There's quite a bit you should know. I smile. Maybe I'm not as alone in this war as I thought. Aunt Helen's revelations hit like dominoes falling in slow motion. We sit in her private study, where even the leather-bound books seem to hold secrets. She slides a manila envelope across her antique desk. Rebecca's been busy, Helen says, tapping the envelope. These are copies of emails between her and several of your colleagues at school. She's been digging. My hands shake as I read. Carefully crafted questions about my teaching credentials. Subtle implications about my relationship with a former principal. Suggestions of misconduct that never happened. She's trying to get me fired? Margaret's idea, Helen says, pouring us both a generous measure of bourbon. She believes financial pressure might encourage you to accept their plans for Michael. The bourbon burns, going down. How long have you known? Long enough to gather proof. Helen's smile is grim. Margaret forgets I'm on the school board's advisory committee. Nothing gets past my desk without my knowledge. A knock interrupts us. Rebecca stands in the doorway, her face falling when she sees me. Oh. I didn't realize you had company, Aunt Helen. Just discussing educational policy, I say sweetly, raising my glass. You seem quite interested in that lately. Color drains from her face. She recovers quickly, but I catch the flash of panic in her eyes. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. No? Should we call Dr. Stevens at Madison High? Or perhaps Principal Rodriguez? Rebecca's perfectly manicured hands clench. You're delusional. Mother was right about you, you'll say anything to cause trouble. Funny, I have emails that suggest otherwise. I pull out my phone, watching her face. Should I forward them to Michael? I'm sure he'd be fascinated by your creative writing skills. You wouldn't dare. But her voice wavers. Try me. She spins on her heel and storms out. Seconds later, we hear her heels clicking rapidly toward Margaret's wing. Well, Helen says, that should make dinner interesting. I need to find Michael. I stand, but Helen catches my arm. Wait. There's more. She pulls out another document. Margaret's been transferring company shares to Rebecca. Shares that were promised to Michael. My stomach drops. Does he know? Michael sees what he wants to see. But if he loses those shares, your Seattle dreams die with them. I'm halfway to Michael's study when I hear raised voices from Margaret's sitting room. I pause, pressing close to the wall. She's becoming a liability, Margaret hisses. The board won't approve Michael's promotion if there's any hint of scandal. I told you she had proof, Rebecca sounds panicked. She's going to tell Michael everything. Let her try. Who do you think he'll believe? The woman who's given him everything, or the gold digger trying to tear him away from his family? I've heard enough. I push open the door, making both women jump. Why don't we ask him? Margaret recovers first. Eavesdropping now? How predictably common. Common enough to record everything you just said. I hold up my phone. Along with proof of Rebecca's little smear campaign. You wouldn't dare destroy this family, Margaret says, but there's fear beneath her certainty. You're right. I wouldn't. I move closer, lowering my voice. But I will destroy you, Margaret. Every carefully constructed lie, every manipulation, every scheme, I'll expose it all unless you back off. Mother? Michael's voice from the doorway makes us all turn. What's going on? The moment stretches like glass about to shatter. I look at my husband's confused face, at Margaret's calculating eyes, at Rebecca's barely concealed panic, and make my decision. Your mother was just explaining why she's been transferring your company shares to Rebecca. The words fall like bombs in the quiet room. Weren't you, Mother Margaret? Michael steps forward, frowning. What shares? I pull out Helen's document, handling the truth like the weapon it is. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about forcing them to destroy themselves. Perhaps, I say softly, we should all sit down. There's quite a lot to discuss. 3 days after the confrontation, Michael still won't look at me during breakfast. The morning sun streams through the conservatory windows, turning everything golden except the cold space between us. His coffee goes untouched, his phone a shield against conversation. The board meeting's today, I say, breaking our careful silence. He adjusts his tie, the blue one Margaret gave him last Christmas. I know. Will you vote against the share transfer? It's complicated. His standard answer these days. Everything's complicated when you're choosing between your wife and your mother. Like Singapore is complicated? I push my plate away. Or like Rebecca trying to get me fired is complicated? She's my sister, Cecilia. His voice carries an edge of warning. And mother. She had her reasons. For stealing your inheritance? For protecting the company. He finally meets my eyes. Did you ever think that maybe she's right? That your plans for Seattle might be impulsive? The betrayal hits like ice water. Before I can respond, Rebecca appears in the doorway, perfectly composed in her executive suit. Michael, Mother needs you in the study. The lawyers are here. He stands immediately, always the obedient son. At the door, he pauses. We'll talk later. Will we? But he's already gone. Rebecca lingers, satisfaction radiating from her like perfume. Oh, don't look so wounded, Cecilia. Did you really think exposing Mother's plans would change anything? Michael knows where his loyalty belongs. With his wife? With his family. She steps closer, voice dropping. But here's what I don't understand, why are you still fighting? You've lost. Michael's already signed the preliminary paperwork for Singapore. My coffee cup clatters against its saucer. What? Last night. Mother had the contracts ready. Her smile is pure venom. 18 months just became 3 years. Congratulations on your long-distance marriage. I'm out of my chair before I realize I'm moving, but Aunt Helen's voice stops me at the door. Rebecca, darling, I believe the lawyers were asking for you as well. Helen sweeps in, elegant as always. Something about those emails you sent to Madison High? Rebecca's face pales. You wouldn't dare. The school board takes harassment very seriously. Helen examines her manicure. As does the SEC when it comes to undisclosed share transfers. Such messy business, don't you think? Rebecca flees, leaving behind the scent of fear and Chanel. He signed? My voice sounds distant to my own ears. Helen touches my arm. Not yet. But he will, unless. Unless what? Unless you're willing to play their game better than they do. She pulls out her phone, showing me an email. Margaret's not the only one with connections to the board. There's a meeting this afternoon at Blackwood Industries. I can get you in. To do what? To remind them that secrets have a way of becoming scandals. She smiles, but it's not her usual warm expression. The question is, are you ready to stop playing defense? I think about Michael's averted eyes, Rebecca's smirk, Margaret's endless machinations. Something shifts inside me, like a lock clicking open. What do you need me to do? Helen's smile widens. Wear that black dress again. And bring the files I gave you, all of them. As I head upstairs to change, I catch a glimpse of myself in one of the mansion's countless mirrors. I barely recognize the woman staring back. There's something harder in her eyes, something that looks remarkably like Margaret. My phone buzzes with a text from Michael, we need to talk before the board meeting. I type back, yes, we do. But not on your mother's terms. The response is immediate, what does that mean? I don't answer. Let him worry for a change. Let them all worry. Because Helen's right, it's time to stop reacting and start acting. If Margaret wants to teach me about power, she's about to learn I'm a very quick study. I smooth down my dress and check my reflection one final time. The woman in the mirror smiles back, and this time, I recognize her perfectly. The Blackwood Industries boardroom feels like a courtroom, all mahogany panels and judgment. I sit beside Helen, watching Margaret hold court at the head of the table, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the afternoon light. Michael won't meet my eyes from his position at her right hand. The Singapore expansion represents a crucial step for our family's legacy, Margaret announces, sliding contracts across the polished surface. Michael's leadership role is essential too. Before we continue, Helen interrupts, her voice silk over steel. The board should review these documents. She produces a thick folder, particularly the sections regarding unauthorized share transfers and potential SEC violations. The room temperature drops 10 degrees. Margaret's smile freezes. This isn't the time, Rebecca starts, but Helen cuts her off. It's exactly the time. Before anyone signs anything, they should know exactly what they're signing away. She turns to the board members. Or who they're signing it to. I stand, my hands steady as I distribute copies of the evidence. You'll find detailed records of every manipulated transaction, every buried audit report, and every threat made to ensure compliance. Cecilia. Michael's voice cracks. What are you doing? Protecting you. The words taste bitter. Someone has to. Margaret rises slowly, a queen whose throne is wobbling. These accusations are groundless. The board knows my dedication to this company. And to your children? I pull out my phone, playing the recording from her sitting room. Her voice fills the space, let her try. Who do you think he'll believe? The woman who's given him everything, or the gold digger trying to tear him away from his family? The board members shift uncomfortably. One begins flipping through the documents with increased interest. You recorded me? Margaret's composure slips. In my own home? I learned from the best. I meet her gaze. Didn't you teach Rebecca to document everything? Including her attempts to sabotage my career? Rebecca pales. Mother, I can explain. Silence. Margaret's command cracks like a whip. She turns to Michael. Surely you won't let your wife destroy everything we've built? Michael stares at the contract before him, then at the evidence folder. His hand trembles slightly as he reaches for his pen. Sign it, Margaret urges. Prove where your loyalty lies. Don't. My voice is barely a whisper. Not for her. Not like this. The pen hovers. Time stretches like taffy. If you sign, I continue, you're choosing her control over our future. Over us. He's choosing family, Rebecca snaps. No. Helen's calm voice cuts through the tension. He's choosing fear. Just like you did, Rebecca. Just like everyone does when Margaret holds the reins. Michael looks up, really looks at me for the first time in days. Something shifts in his expression. Mother, he says quietly, what did you do to Cecilia's job? Margaret's mask slips further. Everything I did was to protect you. From what? The pen clatters to the table. From happiness? From independence? From love? From her. Margaret points at me, composure shattering. She'll take you away, change you, destroy everything I've sacrificed to build. The only thing being destroyed here is your control. I gather the contracts. The board has copies of everything now. Your choice, Margaret, step down gracefully or let them discover exactly how deep your manipulation runs. The silence is deafening. Board members whisper among themselves. Rebecca stares at her hands. Michael stands slowly, deliberately moving to my side. Margaret's eyes narrow to slits. You'll regret this. Both of you. No, I say softly. The only regret would be letting you in. I turn to leave, Michael's hand finding mine. At the door, I pause. Oh, and Margaret? The Singapore project is cancelled. Michael's talents are needed closer to home, in Seattle. Her scream of rage follows us down the hallway, but I don't look back. Some storms you walk away from, knowing the destruction they leave behind is their own punishment. Michael squeezes my hand. We have a lot to talk about. Yes, I agree. But not here. Not in her house. Not anymore. The sun hits our faces as we exit the building, and for the first time in months, I can breathe freely. Sometimes winning isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about freeing yourself from their power to hurt you. The annual Blackwood Charity Gala feels like a funeral where everyone's still pretending to smile. I adjust my emerald dress, chosen to match the family colors, one last attempt at belonging, and watch Margaret work the room. She hasn't spoken to me since the board meeting, but her eyes follow my every move. Michael squeezes my hand. We can leave if you want. And give her the satisfaction? I force a smile as another board member passes. Not a chance. Rebecca approaches, champagne sloshing dangerously in her glass. Mother wants everyone gathered for the announcements. Of course she does. I release Michael's hand. Go. Your mother's waiting. He hesitates, but duty wins out. Always does. I find Helen by the bar, her face grim. Something's wrong, she whispers. Margaret's been meeting with the other board members privately all week. Before I can respond, Margaret taps her glass. The room falls silent. Family, friends, distinguished guests, she begins, her voice carrying that perfect mix of authority and warmth I could never master. As you know, recent events have forced us to re-evaluate certain company positions. My stomach drops. Therefore, it gives me great pleasure to announce that Michael will be taking over as CEO of our European division, effective immediately. The room erupts in applause. Michael looks stunned. Mother, I never agreed. The board voted this morning, Margaret continues smoothly. Your flight leaves tomorrow night. Rebecca will handle the transition here. The room spins. Europe. Not Singapore, Europe. Further away, longer term, more permanent. You can't do this, I step forward, my voice shaking. The board already rejected. The board, Margaret's smile turns razor sharp, reconsidered after reviewing certain historical documents. Particularly those regarding your father's involvement in the Mason scandal 10 years ago. The air leaves my lungs. My father's bankruptcy, the accusations of fraud, the years of rebuilding our family's reputation, how did she know? It would be unfortunate if those details became public, Margaret continues softly. Especially given your new position at the school board. Helen moves to intervene, but I wave her off. This is between me and Margaret now. So this is your revenge? My laugh sounds hollow even to me. Blackmail? This is protection. My son deserves better than a gold digger with a criminal's daughter. The room has gone deadly quiet. Even Rebecca looks uncomfortable. Michael, I turn to him, pleading. You can't let her. But his face tells me everything. The same conflict-avoidant expression, the same inability to stand against his mother's will. It's a good opportunity, he says weakly. Maybe you could join me later? Something breaks inside me. Not my heart, that shattered weeks ago. No, this is different. This is the last thread of hope snapping. No, I say quietly. I won't. Margaret's triumph radiates like a nuclear blast. Well, then. I believe that settles. Because I'm done. I turn to address the room. I'm done playing your games, Margaret. Done watching you manipulate everyone around you. Done pretending this is about family when it's really about control. Security, Margaret snaps her fingers. Please escort my daughter-in-law out. Don't bother. I pull off my wedding ring, the Blackwood family heirloom that never quite fit, and place it on the nearest table. I know the way out. I make it to the foyer before Michael catches up. Cecilia, wait. We can figure this out. No, we can't. I don't turn around. Because you'll never choose me over her. And I'll never be the wife who accepts that. Please. Goodbye, Michael. The night air hits my face as I push through the mansion's doors. Behind me, I hear Margaret's voice rising in victory, already spinning the story of how she saved her son from an unsuitable marriage. Let her have her win. Let her keep her control and her manipulations and her perfect family facade. Because tomorrow, the real war begins. And this time, I'm fighting for myself. I pull out my phone and dial Helen's number. It's time for Plan B. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember who you really are. 3 days after I walk out of the gala, Helen's plan springs into action like a perfectly timed bomb. I stride into Blackwood Industries' emergency board meeting, my heels clicking against marble, every step echoing with purpose. Margaret's face turns ashen when she sees me. This is a closed meeting, she snaps. Not anymore. I drop a thick folder onto the conference table. The SEC might disagree, given what's in here. Rebecca jumps up. You can't just. Sit down, Helen commands from the doorway. All of you need to hear this. Michael enters last, looking between his mother and me with dawning comprehension. What's going on? Show them, Helen nods. I open the folder, spreading out documents like playing cards. Financial records. Real ones, not the doctored versions Margaret's been showing the board. 10 years of systematic fraud, all carefully hidden behind shell companies and offshore accounts. Lies, Margaret hisses, but her hands shake as she reaches for the papers. Truth, I correct. Your mistake was threatening my father. It made me curious about what else you might be hiding. Helen's been collecting evidence for years, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. The board members murmur, passing documents between them. Margaret's carefully constructed world begins to crumble. You ungrateful little. Careful, mother, I say softly. The walls have ears. Just like your sitting room, your office, your private phone line. She lunges for her phone, but Helen's faster. Looking for this? She holds up Margaret's cell. Such interesting conversations you've had lately. Especially about those offshore transfers. Michael, Margaret turns to her last defense. You can't let them destroy everything we've built. We? Michael's voice cracks. Or you? How long have you been stealing from the company? From me? Everything I did was for you. No. He steps away from her reaching hand. Everything you did was for control. And I let you have it because it was easier than fighting. But I'm done being your puppet. Rebecca stands suddenly. Mother, tell them about the Thompson account. Show them you had authorization. Sit down, Rebecca, Margaret commands, but her voice has lost its power. No. Rebecca's face crumples. I forged those documents for you. I lied to the auditors. I did everything you asked, and you're still going to let me take the fall, aren't you? The room erupts in chaos. Board members shouting, Rebecca crying, Margaret trying to maintain order. But her kingdom is falling, one revelation at a time. Enough! My voice cuts through the noise. Here's what happens next. Margaret steps down immediately. All stolen funds are returned. The board implements new oversight measures. Or. Margaret's eyes narrow. Or these documents go public. Every scheme, every manipulation, every crime exposed. Your choice. You would destroy this company just for revenge? No. I meet her gaze steadily. I would save it from you. That's the difference between us, Margaret. You destroy what you claim to love. I protect what matters, even if it costs me everything. Michael moves to my side, his shoulder brushing mine. Sign the resignation, Mother. It's over. Margaret looks around the room, seeing only hostile faces. Even Rebecca won't meet her eyes. Her empire crumbles in real time. Fine. She picks up a pen with trembling fingers. You win. No one wins here, I say quietly. But maybe now everyone can heal. As Margaret signs away her power, I feel nothing but emptiness. This victory tastes like ashes, but sometimes burning it all down is the only way to build something new. Michael touches my arm. Stay. Please. We can start over. I look at him, really look at him, and see both the man I loved and the boy still seeking his mother's approval. Some things can't be fixed, Michael. But they can be finished. I turn to leave, but Margaret's broken voice stops me. I was protecting my family. No, I say without turning back. You were protecting your fear. There's a difference. The door closes behind me with a final click, leaving behind the ruins of an empire and the possibility of something better rising from its ashes. The Seattle rain feels different from the carefully manicured precipitation that waters the Blackwood Estate's gardens. Here, it's wild and honest, much like the life I'm building from the wreckage of my marriage. I unlock the door to my new consulting firm, Educational Futures, and find Helen already inside, reviewing blueprints for our expansion. The board approved your proposal, she says without looking up. Full funding for the Inner City Education Initiative. And Margaret? Still trying to maintain control from her house arrest. Rebecca's testimony sealed her fate. Helen finally meets my eyes. Michael asked about you again. Of course he did. The divorce papers sit unsigned on my desk, his signature line blank after 3 attempts to deliver them. He's different now, Helen continues. Standing up to what's left of Margaret's influence. Leading the company's rehabilitation. Good for him. I mean it, mostly. But some bridges can't be unburned. A knock interrupts us. Rebecca stands in the doorway, looking smaller without her designer armor. Your secretary said I could come up. Rebecca. I keep my voice neutral. This is unexpected. I'm not staying. She clutches her purse like a shield. I just needed to say something. I wait, remembering a time when her silence was a weapon. Now it feels like surrender. You were right, she says finally. About Mother. About everything. I spent so long trying to be what she wanted that I forgot who I was. And now? Now I'm trying to remember. She pulls out an envelope. These are my shares in the company. I want you to use them for your education program. Rebecca. Please. Let me do one right thing in all this mess. I take the envelope, feeling the weight of transformation in my hands. What will you do? Start over. Somewhere new. A ghost of her old smile appears. Maybe even somewhere where it rains. After she leaves, Helen pours us both coffee. You know, revenge doesn't usually end with redemption. This wasn't about revenge. I watch Seattle's skyline emerge from the morning mist. Not really. It was about breaking free. All of us. My phone buzzes, Michael's daily message. But today's is different. I signed the papers. They're with your lawyer. I hope you find what you're looking for. Something shifts in my chest, not quite peace, but closer than I've felt in months. I'm leaving too, Helen announces suddenly. The board can handle the transition without me. There's a literary festival in Paris I've always wanted to attend. Running away? No. She smiles. Running toward something. Isn't that what you taught us all? The rain intensifies, washing the windows clean. Below, Rebecca's car pulls away from the curb, heading toward whatever future she's chosen. Somewhere across the city, Michael sits in his office, finally standing on his own. And in her monitored mansion, Margaret faces the consequences of her choices. My phone buzzes again. A text from my father, proud of you, kid. Always have been. I touch the window, feeling Seattle's pulse through the glass. This city doesn't care about family names or inherited power. It only asks what you're building next. You know what the strangest part is? I tell Helen. I thought taking Margaret down would feel like victory. But it just feels like freedom, she finishes. Messy, complicated freedom. I nod, thinking of all the perfectly arranged gardens and carefully controlled lives I've left behind. Here, things grow wild and true, reaching for light through the rain. So, Helen raises her coffee cup. What's next? I look at my reflection in the window, no longer the outsider trying to fit into someone else's world, but something entirely new. Something real. Everything, I answer. Everything's next. The rain continues falling, washing away the last traces of the woman who once tried to please the Blackwoods. Let Margaret keep her mansion and her memories. I'll take the wild unknown any day. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming exactly who you were meant to be, without their permission or approval. I pick up my phone and delete Michael's number. It's time to write my own story.